This is Trophy Dark, a warm and pleasant hum, part one. Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. When I call on you, please say your name, your pronouns, and anything else you would like for us to know about you. I will start though. My name is Jason. I use he, him. They is also fine. And I am the co-publisher of Trophy Dark, along with its creator, Jesse Ross. And I have run this incursion a couple of times, and I'm excited to give it a go again. Bees. Let's go over to Kavya.
I'm Kavya. I use she, her pronouns, and I am buzzing to get started.
Thank you. Daniel.
Hey, I'm Daniel. I use he, they pronouns. I've just gotten back into role-playing games after a bit of a hiatus, so I'm excited to be here. I have played Trophy Dark a couple of times now, and actually the first time I played was, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and it was an incursion called The Mellified Man. So I guess I have a thing about trophy and honey. So here we are.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you so much. Jazzy.
Well, Daniel stole my bee pun, so I'm Jazzy, she, her pronouns. I've played Trophy Dark twice, so I'm very excited to have this as my third time playing Trophy Dark. Not any incursions with beads though, so that's new.
Fabulous. Thank you. And Jack.
Yeah, my name's Jack. Any pronoun is fine. And I don't have any bee puns because it's too early in the morning for me. But I do like bees. So there we go.
Fantastic. So I want to begin by doing what's called CATS. CATS is an acronym that stands for concept, aim, tone, and subject matter. I like to do this at the beginning of a session and series in order to establish some basic expectations for what we're going to be doing this week and next week. And so the concept first of Trophy Dark. Trophy Dark is a dark fantasy horror game with an emphasis on the horror part of it. It is about treasure hunters who are going into a place where they are not wanted in order to acquire some kind of treasure. And the game is all about them sort of getting their comeuppance, right? These are intruders, and they are getting their punishment essentially for doing the intruding. It is a very narrative forward game, a very like story forward game. And so we'll talk about some sort of gameplay elements in a bit, but really fundamentally what it kind of comes down to is it's a very like kind of collaborative sort of horror storytelling game. In terms of this particular incursion, a warm and pleasant hum, you might have guessed it's about bees. And that's all I'm going to say about it for now. It was one of the this particular incursion was one of the winners of a contest we ran ages ago, and then it eventually made its way into the official book. The aim. So the aim of our characters is to acquire whatever fabulous treasure is at the heart of the incursion. The incursion is what we call the adventure. The aim of us as players is to tell a good story. And so that means that sometimes we may have to sort of throw our character to the narrative wolves in order to serve the story, and you should be ready to do that if that comes to pass. And then the aim of us as a play group today is to make characters after I'm done with my spiel, and then we'll introduce them, and then we'll do rings 1 and ring 2, and then next week we'll do rings 3, 4, and 5. The tone of the game is dark, as you might imagine. This particular incursion has a lot of like kind of nature, very like sort of like a nature horror, like a kind of folk horror vibe almost, but very, very focused on the natural world, not people so much more like insects and animals. And the subject matter, we helpfully have a whole list of subject matter things for each incursion. So I will grab that really quickly, which of course I don't have pulled up at the moment, naturally. Oh, here we go though. Okay, so these subject matters we'll do lines and veils in a bit, but these are like the ones that are kind of hard to avoid. So the warnings are biting and stinging, cannibalism, confined spaces, eye trauma, graphic violence, that's table stakes for Trophy Dark. And the big one for this one that's really hard to avoid is harm to animals and insects. It's just the nature of this particular incursion. But we can put a veil on all of this stuff. So it's not like we have to like get super detailed with it. We'll have 3 safety tools on the table today. The first is the open door policy. You can leave for any reason. You don't have to explain yourself. The second is the X card. In the context of this call, what that means is if something happens in the story or in the game that that makes you uncomfortable in an unfun way, you can certainly say X card or type it in the chat, and I will pause play and we'll figure out what we need to change in order to keep the story going. I might ask what is being X carded, but I won't ask why is it being X carded. And then we'll also be doing lines and veils. Lines are things that basically just story elements that we are not going to have in the story. And then veils are things that we're okay with being in the story, but we prefer not to get super detailed on the role play with it. We just sort of kind of hand wave it a bit. By way of example, I'll say what my lines and veils are, and then when we are making characters, you'll have a section in the character sheet for you to go and mark your own for the group. But as by way of example, I'm going to put sexual violence behind a line. I prefer not to have that in my gaming. And then for a veil, we're going to have, I'm going to put torture. I'm okay with torture being a thing that happens in the story. I prefer not to role play the torture. And so that is cats. Does anybody have any questions about that stuff? Okay. Then what we're going to do now is we're going to go over and do character creation. We will pause the video for that. Okay, let's go ahead and introduce these characters. For now, the character introductions can be pretty simple. I mostly just want the basics, like your occupation, your background, your drive, what rituals you have. And if you know something about your character's drive and what it means at this point, certainly tell us, but it's okay if you don't, because we're going to explore, in particular, the drives as we play. That's kind of like the main goal of what we're doing, is to kind of explore that aspect of the character. So it's okay if we discover it and play. But if you know anything at the beginning in terms of what things mean, by all means, do tell. I'm going to go in the order of the sheet. And so I'm going to start with Jack and Jack's character, Nil.
Nil, yeah.
Nil. All right, tell us about Nil.
So Nil, he, him pronouns. He is a Nest. His occupation is Nest. The skills involved are coordination, rituals, and vermin. His background is an oppressed laborer. His skill in that is rebellion. His current list of rituals are shell and compel, and his current drive is to retire in comfort in the Rose District of Amperet.
Fantastic, thank you. And let's go ahead and go now to Daniel and Valen.
Yeah, I'll be playing Valen. Uses he, him pronouns. Occupation is spider, which gives him the skills surprise, traps, and vermin. And background is opportunistic grave robber, which gives him the skill of death. Has rituals bind, hold a creature in place for as long as you stay motionless. And ghoul, which is animate a dead body. It's nothing like being a grave robber when your targets can dig themselves out. And then drive is going to be find the resting ground of the morning night. I have no idea what that means, but I'm excited to find out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And let's go to Jazzy and Alina.
Yeah. Alina, she, her pronouns. Her occupation is herbalist, which gives her perception, plants, and remedies. And her background is that she is a liberated prisoner, which gives her the skill of making deals. Her drive is to arm the resistance against Lord Hafnir's tyranny, because I believe that that is the reason why she was probably imprisoned in the first place, because she tried to do that, or maybe stage something that didn't entirely go well. And I think she's just trying to kind of see that through. So a little bit of a revenge motivation, I think, might be hiding beneath the surface. Her rituals are glamour. I can appear more charming and attractive, and ashes, burn something irreplaceable to turn a creature or object to dust.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And finally, let's go to Kavya and Ifori.
Yeah. Ifori, she, her pronouns. Her occupation is vessel, which gives her the skills of attraction, rituals, and surrender. Her background is escaped cultist, which gives her the skill of deception. Her rituals are Scramble, which is touch a creature to make them forget their known rituals until the next sunrise, and Swarm, which is trade favors with a colony of vermin. And her drive is to resurrect the cult of Darawan, because you can take the girl out of the cult, you can't take the cult out of the girl.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Great. All right. So I will say, in terms of these drives, a couple of them are some of the like aspects of the drives are covered pretty well in Trophy Loom. So in between sessions, like between this week and next week, if you want to look up that part of Loom, you certainly can for inspiration, or like if we're on the break or whatever, you want to do that. The Rose District of Ambaret is particularly well fleshed out. As is there is some mention of Darawan in Loom as well. The others I think are not, so those are pretty wide open. But in any case, it doesn't really matter too much, because the cult of Darawan is whatever you want it to be, Kavya, ultimately. But if you just want some inspiration, you can certainly go see what Loom has to say. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple of rules and gameplay things before we begin. We'll take a break after I talk about this stuff, but then we'll begin play after that. And there are a few things that I want to go over. The first is that this is Trophy Dark embraces what we call at Trophy HQ the play to lose ethos, which means that you should try to keep your character alive. You should try to help them achieve their drive, or to acquire the treasures of the incursion in order to achieve their drive. But at a certain point, it's going to become pretty obvious that your character is going to either be killed or be changed in some really dramatic negative way, or maybe they are going to turn against the group. And whenever those opportunities present themselves, like, lean into it. At that point, it's just about giving us the best story you can give us, right? And that's what play to lose means. Sometimes leaning into bad things for your character is how you get to good story outcomes. So that's the one thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say about the gameplay is that it involves the posing and answering of questions. I'm going to pose lots of questions to you all over the course of the next 2 sessions. And sometimes you might know the answer right away, and sometimes you don't. But the important thing is that even if you don't know how to answer a question right away, you can just say that and then just give it some thought and then come back later. But if you're kind of thinking about, like, well, how should I like focus, how should I focus how I think about these questions? How should I approach this? And the answer is your drive. Your drive and the drive of the other characters that's the sort of the nucleus of the whole story, right? So whenever I ask you a question, try to look at it through the lens of your drive, because we're essentially getting these characters at the very tail end of their story, right? And the most important part of their story at this point in their life is the drive. So let the drive be the lens through which you view your character, and indeed through which you answer the questions that I pose, or at least think on it, touch on it if you need some ideas or some inspiration. The third thing I want to say is that this is a very collaborative game. I have an incursion, which is like an adventure structure, and my job is to sort of move you through the 5 layers of that incursion. And I have some different events and encounters and things that will happen, but it's pretty skeletal. The meat of the story comes from all of us together, right? And so we are truly like creating our version of a warm and pleasant hum. We are creating our story together. And a lot of that happens through the question and answer process, but a lot of it also just comes from this really particular die roll called the risk roll. Now, the risk roll in particular has an aspect called the devil's bargain. So a devil's bargain is something that, so let's say you're rolling some dice to do a thing, and the other players and myself can offer you a devil's bargain, which is something that will happen in the fiction, even if whether you succeed or fail. It's something that's going to happen no matter what. And this is sort of the mechanically enforced way of creating story together. So an example. Let's say, for example, that let's say Alina is trying to jump across a gorge. Okay. And so we're rolling some dice, and I offer the devil's bargain. Well, Alina, no matter what, you're going to drop your herbalist tools down the gorge, right? And so if you succeed, if you take that deal and you succeed at the roll, it's because they just slipped out of your pack or whatever. If you take that deal and you fail, it's because Alina also went down into the gorge, right? So that's sort of the idea between like the no matter what, the herbalist tools are going down in the gorge. Of course, Kavya is going to offer a much more interesting devil's bargain than that. And Kavya offers, no matter what, there is a representative of Lord Hafir on the other side of the gorge, right? And now suddenly we have something that implicates Alina's drives, and it introduces an aspect of the story that no one saw coming, right? And so that is that's sort of how devil's bargains work. Sometimes the simple ones are good, and if that's all you can think of, that's fine. And sometimes they're even the best options too. And sometimes the more sort of more narratively interesting ones are good. So just some ideas, some examples. And so with all of that said, before we begin play, does anyone have any questions? Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and introduce the incursion, and then we'll take a break. A warm and pleasant hum. The human world has room for many monarchs, but the humming woods has only one queen. The six-legged mother of millions dines exclusively on an elixir said to cure any ill or even extend one's life, a royal jelly of matchless quality. Few dare attempt to steal any jelly, protected as it is by the swarms that live in her remote hive. This hive is called the sixth-form heart. But what if one had grander dreams than that of a waxed sack containing purloined jelly? If one can claim the queen herself, one can control her enormous six-legged family and the wealth their industry represents. But the denizens of the sixth-form heart have a loyalty that is pheromone-fueled and absolute, and the venomous means to protect their home and monarch. And so when we get back from the break, we will begin our approach to the humming woods. I will see you all in 5. Ring 1. The treasure hunters approach the humming woods. The journey to the humming woods was preceded by a few things. First, despite the deep shadows of the place as you enter the woods in your approach, there's a pleasant warmth that suffuses the forest. It might even make your outer layers of clothing and armor feel unnecessary or even uncomfortable. But also, your entrance into the humming woods was met by a couple of strange things, which you see now. The first, a circle of 6 animal skulls arranged by some strange intelligence. Large, small, bear and rabbit, elk and squirrel, human and child. And the tree trunks have a very particular yellow and black striped mushroom clinging to them. It's almost as if the trees and the vegetation, the fungus themselves understand that they are also loyal subjects to the mother of millions. But in any case, this is how we find the 4 of you. And by way of just introducing your characters a little bit more, I'd like to know how you are dealing with the warmth, with the heat. I think you probably came from a slightly colder clime, and now it's really quite warm all of a sudden. how do we see you sort of dealing with that, making yourselves comfortable? Whoever wants to speak first, go ahead.
I think Ifori had a coat on which she's taken off since and then kind of stuffed into her bag. And I think she's taken a scarf that she had wrapped around her neck and she's used it to tie her hair up.
For Nil, he is kind of on the shorter side and a bit lankier, brown hair falling across his face, and in this heat it kind of clings to his clammy skin. He's wearing looks to be like an oversized uniform, and it's been through the ringer. It's muddied and dirtied and frayed, and anyone who's been to Amberette would recognize it as a custodian's uniform. But it's very old, and I think that in this heat, he's not accustomed to being in insufferable weather, but he is still human and subjected to this heat. He kind of like tries to wipe the sweat off his face, brush his hair away from his face. And in those moments, we see glimpses of his skin, and we can see that his skin itself, the forearms and the belly, the lower back are all kind of decorated in these small holes.
For Alina, I think her clothing would already be prepared for any kind of weather. It's clearly there's mud on her boots. There's a few like scrapes, small scratches on the clothes, but they're all very sturdy material. Obviously made to get wet, dry again, get wet, dry again. And I think the thing that she has been doing is not with her clothes, but it's almost like a spider. She's been crawling from one bit of shadow to the next, to the next, to the next, kind of making her path zigzagging like that to get all the little bits of shade that she can. And especially, I think the further we get to the forest, the more she has stopped doing this, but she has taken like some plants, broken them open to get the little juice from the stems, just to get that little bit of water to help her sweat, to help the heat evaporate just a little bit.
I don't think Valen's dealing with it at all. I think that he is covered and sweating profusely, and he sort of like wipes some greasy hair out of his face that was plastered there with sweat, and he's muttering under his breath. It's just very, very uncomfortable.
A question for each of you to ponder and answer in due time. Do you desire a cure, or do you desire power from this expedition? The cure, of course, would be to acquire the royal jelly and its fabulous restorative properties. The power would be to acquire the mother of millions herself. Or maybe there's something else connected to your drive that you seek that you haven't told us about yet. But in any case, think on it. And another thing to know is we don't dwell too much on how you all came to be together. Scoundrels and interlopers find a way, and they find each other. The details are not important. What's important is right now. You've been on the road for a number of days. You've arrived at the Humming Woods. It's hot as hell. And there are signs that you're getting closer to where you need to be. Let's just have that scene for a little bit, and then I'll interrupt it when I feel necessary. Role play.
I think that maybe there's, and it's very small, but like maybe a little bit of a brook with some very slowly running water that Nil is crouched at. and he's just trying his best to gather up as much water and drink it, and kind of wash some of the sweat off his face. His fingernails are all caked with dirt that doesn't seem to come out even, no matter how much he puts his hands in the water. But I think he's crouched there, and he'll look back at the others and say, "Is it any much further from here? I think we're getting close."
I think Velen will go stumble over next to Nil and sort of collapse on the ground, his knees buried in the mud, and will be splashing water on his face. We'll just say, God, I hope so. I don't know how much more of this I can take.
A little early to give up, isn't it? We've barely made it into the forest. And I think Alina has just kind of been watching them like be this desperate for water, and she like gracefully sits down next to them. And I think offers you both this kind of a stem from something that's been mushed together. She'll be like, it'll regulate your heartbeat. You won't feel any colder, but you won't get sick in the heat either.
Nil looks at Alina with a bit of suspicion in his eyes. He doesn't seem to trust anyone here. But considering the heat and considering how hungry he is, I think he just kind of snatches it out of her hand and then scuttles away a couple feet away and just kind of starts to bite into it.
She sees your suspicion, and I think it just makes her smile, and not even necessarily in a reassuring way. It's amusing to her that you would be suspicious like this.
I think Euphoria has settled herself a little upstream from all of this, seeing the dirt that covers everyone. And obviously she's dirty too, but less she has to deal with, the better. And she's also taken to like washing her hands and her face in some water. Watching this debacle.
Valen will accept the offering from Alina and just sort of cradle it and, chew on little bits of it and say, thank you so much.
Of course, we're in this together. And I think she gives everyone perhaps too pointed a look for such an innocent sentence.
Alina. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Valen.
Valen says some of us, perhaps, and gives a pretty pointed look at Ifori, who is by herself upstream.
Alina,
A little.
bringing cures to your companions in the form of this sort of plant stem. I suppose I will ask you now the question, are you here for the cure or for power or for something else?
I think for some, well, sort of power, but perhaps not in the way of getting the queen. But I think what I know making the cures that I do is that sometimes the cure is to, get rid of the arm. Sometimes the cure is violence. Sometimes that's what you need to truly make something better.
Interesting. Euphoria, what are you up to right now?
Sorry, what do I have to?
Oh, what are you up to? Just what are you doing at the moment?
I think after she's washed her hands and face and made sure that no dirt will reach her from anyone else, she's kind of stepped back to stand in a relatively shadier spot, maybe examining the vegetation, the strange striping of it all.
Euphoria, a question. How would your life change if you proved you could pierce the heart of the humming woods and return sticky-fingered in triumph?
It would give me a sort of importance and leverage that I could use to resurrect this cult. think it would be everything I needed.
Does the cult of Darwan have a connection to bees in some way?
I think so the way I was looking at it was having the cult of Darwan be something in direct opposition with her former cult that she escaped from. So the need to resurrect it is twofold. I think it'd be interesting if it did have a tie-in to bees in some way, though the exact nature of it I'm not sure of either.
A thing I find very interesting about this story so far is you were part of a cult before, and Alina was a prisoner. And those are both environments, I imagine, where people are in cells of a sort. And of course, bees, their hives have cells, right? It's just an interesting thing to ponder. Makes one wonder. Valen. Many people have attempted this incursion into the Humming Woods. You seem like you're not even really prepared for the journey. Your day job is really, or your former day job at least, is really nothing like this at all. This is suffuse with life. This is overflowing and abundant life, and your past is with death. I have to wonder, what does the morning night have to do with this place?
I think the morning night was a target of one of Valen's grave robbing heists. And I think the morning night, when Valen caused him to, to rise from his grave and bring forth his treasures, turned out to be so beautiful that Valen fell in love with him. But the ghoul ritual only lasts for so long. They only had so much time together. And I think that this honey that Valen has heard of here in the heart of the forest has the potential to make that a longer lived relationship.
So you seek the cure.
I do.
Interesting. Nil, many people have made this journey and have failed. The chances don't seem great here. And yet, how will you succeed where others have failed? What makes you particularly well suited to reaching the sixth form heart?
I think if I can answer in the form of sort of a flashback, we see Nil kind of thinking about his time in Amberette because he's been there before. And we see him in this custodian's uniform, but it's much nicer, much more, looks newer. But we see them at the end of his shift, and as he's disrobing, we see that he is with the High Gardeners of Amberette, and he is forced to disrobe. And when he disrobes, we see that the entirety of his body, from the waist up, is covered in these holes, and they begin to pour him smoke, and bees begin to exit his body. And they gather up the bees in these beautiful crystalline combs. That's just his job. He is essentially a nest. He's something to help pollinate those beautiful rose gardens, and he's owed a position amongst them now. He has nothing left to lose by getting the bees, by finding the mother of millions and taking his place where he believes that he deserves.
So you intend to not only get the mother of millions, but to literally put her in your body.
Yes.
Interesting. What a prize that would be in Umbret, a place where they have everything and have seen everything and want for nothing. Intriguing. You eventually all come upon a group of people, the type of people that Nil might actually recognize. They are dressed as, well, we'll say amateur apiarists. Their faces are covered with a sort of strange mesh that obscures their features. And then they have wide-brimmed hats with kind of hoods. So they're very sealed up, theoretically, from bees. And then the mesh allows them to look out. I would say there's about, there's 4 of them, say, and they are currently trying to get a panicked horse under control. This horse is wearing a really similar face covering as them, the sort of horse-shaped, has the kind of the hood and then the mesh over it. And the horse is whinnying and bucking and kicking, and the apiarists are trying to get him under control. The horse looks like all of their supplies and equipment on it. And when they see you all approach, or at least when they catch sight of you, they'll call out, "A little bit of help, please. A little bit of assistance, please." What do you all do?
I think Nils, upon seeing these apiarists, I guess, I think he's taken aback. These represent people who share a similar goal, and currently he's competing with 3 other people for a similar goal. And so I think that he starts to reach into his like he has like a little leather sack on his waist, and just kind of instinctively starts to reach for some things in there. But when they start to cry out for help, he'll look to the others and say, "What do we do? Do we help them? We don't help them, right?"
It makes no sense to help them.
They may know where
Th-
we're going. We may
I
be
think
provided
Alina's
information.
already stepping forward. Sorry,
That
go
amateur.
ahead.
No, please.
Yeah, I think Alina is like, as soon as she saw the horse, even before they called out for help, I think she was already stepping forward. And I think she's looking around and maybe recognizes that some of these plants around may have like some sedative purposes, and she will pluck them very quickly, crush them up in her hand. The sticky juices are dripping on the floor, and then she's going to like try and reach out to the horse to hopefully get to smell it and calm down just enough to help them.
I like it. Let's do a risk roll to see if you can get the creature to calm down. So if you want to follow along with the rules here, on the character keeper, you can, on the left, all the rolls are over there, and if you just hover, it kind of says all the instructions. When you attempt a risky task, declare what you hope will happen. You already have. And then the rest of us get to say what we think could go wrong here. Now, we won't always all speak on every risk roll, but for this one, I would like for us to. So what could go poorly for Alina, for the horse, for the apiarists, for all of you, if Alina fails?
I think if she fails to calm the horses down, I think this may be a little bit obvious, but I think it'll just buck her in the face.
I mean, I think you
like
could get the formulation wrong and the horse just dies a grueling death, right? You poison it.
I think it could turn out that it's just a ruse by these amateur apiarists.
That might be a good devil's bargain too, Daniel.
I think the apiarist may misinterpret what you're trying to do and become aggressive.
So we don't have to decide anything yet. It's mostly just for me to hear everyone's ideas. And the next thing we do, of course, is to build our die pool. So you're going to take a light die if your background or occupation gives you skills that would help with this. And I think probably plants, remedies, certainly you do. So you have 1 light die. And then you take a light die for accepting a devil's bargain from another player or myself. Now, the devil's bargains, I'll remind you, are complications that occur no matter what the outcome of the roll. And I actually really like the idea that no matter what, one of the apiarists has, I don't know if I'm saying that right, that's how I keep saying it. One of the apiarists has treachery in his heart. That's my offer. Everyone else gets to make an offer too.
I think the apiarists are very taken by Alina and her skills, and very enthusiastic about them to the point that they will not leave us alone.
They fanboy and fangirl over Alina's
Exactly.
herbalism skills. Herbalism stands. Kavi or Daniel, do you have an offer?
The horse is too sedated and hurts itself falling.
I don't think I have anything.
You have 3 offers on the table, Jazzy. What do you think? You can reject them also. You don't have to take any of them.
No, I'm doubting between fanboys or treachery because either of these is very fun to me. Let's go with the fanboys. I think that could be interesting.
So no matter
See how
what,
the others react.
yeah, no matter what, the apiarists are going to be very attached. Good. Okay, so you've got 2 light dice, and then you would take a dark die if you're risking your mind or body to succeed, but I don't think you are yet. Or if you were performing a ritual, and you're not doing that either. So for now, I think just 2 light dice. So if you go to the die
All right.
roller, just type in to the risk roll 2 light dice and
All right.
6 light. There you go.
6.
Yep, that's all you need. Please go ahead and describe just the process of calming the horse down.
Yeah, I think we see her like approach. Her hands are green and dirty from the plants that she mushed up. We see that they're very callous. There's like these hands have obviously been through a lot even before all the added nature. And she steps closer, holding her hand out, just trying to mimic the movements of the horse where it's going. And then in like one fell swoop, something that she's obviously done before, she will grab the horse by its mane and bring her hand up to its nose. And it bucks for a little while and she kind of like hangs on. There's this moment where it definitely looks like it might go very, very wrong. And then the horse just kind of sags and goes quiet, and she'll just like pet it and be like, there we go. It's
Do you
all
have
good
to
now.
remove its? Do you have to remove its hood?
All
in order
right.
to do
Yeah,
this?
I imagine that I have to. Yeah.
When you remove the hood, you can everybody can see a little bit better what happened to the horse, and I'll veil this as much as I can here, but essentially the horse has terrible, has been pierced by stingers all over its snout and face. Its eyes are yellow and running with pus, and the creature was clearly driven mad with the envenomment, the pain of it. But perhaps most importantly, and most significantly, there's still a bee crawling on the horse's snout. I would like for everyone to do the ruin roll for seeing the horse in this state. A ruin roll is whenever you just witness something disturbing or something happens to you that is disturbing, and it represents whether your ruin score is going up. And I think everybody's starting at ruin 3 because you each took 2 rituals. And so if you roll higher than 3, then your ruin is going to go up, and indeed you will get a condition. So let's see how we did. Alina got a 4, so ruin is going up, but Afori got a 2, so Afori's okay. Nil's going up with a 5, but Valen is okay with a 1. So Alina and Nil, How does it make you feel to see the horse like this?
Familiar. He's no stranger to being stung by bees, obviously. But I think seeing that bee clinging to its face, he becomes sort of fixated on it. He wants to get it. He wants that in his body. And I think he starts to break away from the others and starts to approach the horse directly, trying to use Alina's current sedation of the horse as sort of a distraction.
Very good. Alina, how does it make you feel?
I think Alina just feels a great pity for it, and an anger that these things happen, and that she knows that this horse can't be saved. And I think she just feels that pity and that anger at this situation, and a helplessness of sorts, even, that with all that she knows and with all that she can do, she cannot fix this. And I don't think that's something that she copes with very well, with the knowledge that not everything is in her control to fix or make it better the way that she thinks things are better.
And yet maybe it is. You start to notice, as you consider this, as you're thinking about how you can or cannot fix things, your saliva tastes particularly sweet in your mouth. Even as you swallow it down, nutritious. And perhaps, if surreptitiously applied to your companion's food, or if you lick a wound or some such thing, it might even have restorative properties. I don't know, but that's your condition. Pondering your sweet saliva and its potentials.
Amazing.
Nil, you said you're approaching the horse.
Yes.
I'm intrigued by this. What are you going to do?
I think he's just going to try and use, because obviously the apiarists are smitten by Alina and her generosity. So I think that he's going to just try and like sneak behind and just sort of go up to the snout of the horse as carefully as he can, less on trying to calm the horse and more on trying to coax the bee away from it to come to him.
To get the bee or the horse? To
The
come
bee.
to you? The bee. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I don't need a roll or anything, but I will say that I think this is connected to your condition that you get because of your ruin. And that's that you find that you're able to understand what the bee is saying to you. What perhaps was previously just the sound of subsonic hums or barely audible hums has a certain logic to it. There's a certain language here. There's a certain understanding. How does your newfound understanding between you and this bee, the bee, by the way, is about the size of a fist, how
Ooh.
does it manifest?
I think as he's approaching, he hears the humming at first and he's used to the humming, but when he gets closer, he starts to hear words come through the hums, these very kind of like harmonious words. And he pauses and stops, and his eyes start to well. He has always wanted to communicate with these things, these creatures. He's always been connected to them, but has never understood them in the way that he has always wanted to. And so I think that he just kind of begins to approach. He continues to approach, but I think now at this point he's like got tears kind of coming down his cheek.
Yeah. The bee will join you. What does that look like?
He's got his hand out very carefully and it's trembling, not just from nerves, but from just general malnutrition and this heat. And he just kind of, his voice is shivering as he's calling out to it, just saying, I can hear you. Please just I'm here to help. I'm a friend. Just please come with me. This horse is no good for you.
The bee does crawl onto your hand. And we'll just pause there for a moment. Valen and Ifori, you have a perhaps more healthy and detached view of whatever's going on right now in this situation, as opposed to your two companions. Valen, something that you will notice that no one else seems to have noticed yet, even your companions, is that the horse had a pack on it that got thrown off and is over in the side of a little ditch. No one else seems to have noticed it. It's not even clear if the apiarists know yet. The apiarists are distracted. Ifori, we'll talk about that, why that is in a moment. But Valen, what do you do?
Oh, Valen is going to scuttle over there like the little sneak that he is and rummage through the pack.
Are you going to try to do this like surreptitiously to where no one notices you, or are you just going to casually walk over there and pick it up?
Oh, we're going to do it surreptitiously.
I want to risk roll then. What could go wrong here? Only Jack gets to speak.
I think what could go wrong is as you're going for the pack, you don't notice it, but there is a creature that's made its home inside of the pack. And when you open it, it will lash out at you violently.
Intriguing. Taking a look at dice, do you have a relevant skill here, Helen? Surprise, maybe.
Maybe surprise.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. You are a spider, an opportunistic grave robber. They both imply sort of sneakiness and deviousness. You also have traps. I think in general, we can interpret this generously to say that you could try to surreptitiously grab the pack. You have a light die there. Kavya, you can offer the devil's bargain.
I think no matter what, at least one person notices.
Oh, interesting. Oh, we lost Kavya. Well, we'll keep going. Sure, she'll join us in a moment. She probably, I know what she did. She probably hit the wrong button when she was muting herself. Yeah. I've done that before.
Sure, I'll take that devil's bargain. It's no fun being sneaky if no one notices you.
Yeah, I think well, so like the thing, what was at stake was whether you get noticed. I think we'll say what's at stake is whether you get the pack or not. We'll just say that.
Okay.
I'll decide who notices you when you take that. You got 2 light dice. Go ahead and roll 2 light. See how it goes.
2 light, 0 dark. Here we go. That's a 5.
It's not bad. The complication is just that the person who notices you is one of the apiarists, and they want a particular thing out of the pack. They're taking the opportunity to get something that they've wanted from the rest of the group. If you don't want to deal with that, you can add a dark die and try to get a 6, but otherwise...
No, I'm happy to deal with that. Yeah.
Good. So you're sneaking over to get the pack. We'll talk about the pack in a minute. Ifori, the other apiarists, there are 3 of them. They are huddled together, whispering, talking. They have these mesh masks on, so you can't quite make out what they're looking at, but you can tell that they are generally sort of like looking back occasionally and focusing their attention on Alina, as if they're trying to make a decision about something. What do you do, Ifori?
I think I actually do go up to them and I kind of behind them and say, what are we deciding?
They get a little startled and they say, We know who your companion is.
And who would that be?
We believe that your companion is someone spoken of in prophecy. She who soothes beasts. She who conjures plants. And then they kind of like get a little nervous. Would you be wearing or have any kind of outward sign of your allegiance to Darawan?
No, I haven't resurrected the cult yet. I don't really have the right to wear that sign.
Very good. They say, we are enthusiastic followers of the Mother of Millions. Her human cult, we have somewhat fallen out of favor. But perhaps your friend was meant to find us here. Yes, this is what prophecy foretells.
She crosses her arms and kind of regards them for a moment. And this prophecy of yours, what becomes of her in it?
And they kind of, you can't really read their facial expressions, but they do pause for a moment. And then they say, prophecies have so many strange and conflicting endings, don't they?
Don't they?
Meanwhile, let's just pick up the scene with Valen briefly, and then we'll kind of bring everybody back together. Valen, you're looking through the pack, these supplies. One is a shattered vial labeled anti-venom. It was shattered probably when the pack was thrown, but there are a few salvageable drops at the bottom that you might be able to keep hold of. Another in the pack is a crude map with 3 great circles where the hive could be, and notes on the paths and schedules of scouting bees. And on the back, there's a drawing of a bee wearing a leash like a guide hound or something would wear. And then, perhaps most interestingly, there is a stinger the size of a human hand from some enormous and monstrous variety of bee, no doubt. One of the apiarists sees you down in the ditch and has split off from the group and says, I won't say anything to anyone about that. If you just, well, there's something in there that I want. The rest is yours.
What is it that you want, friend? I'm sure that we can share.
I would like the map.
How visible are we to everyone else?
I think you have to go down a little ways so you can be having this conversation. It's kind of in there's like a high wall in the ditch, so the two of you can be kind of unseen, and if you're quiet, unheard.
I think that Valen will will be speaking so quietly that the apiarist maybe has to get close to hear him. And I think that when he is close enough, Valen is going to strike with the stinger in the bag and is going to murder this man.
Very good. I like it. Risk roll.
Okay.
Jazzy, what could go wrong here?
The obvious one would of course be that they see it or hear it, but I think maybe something more interesting is what could go wrong is you do kill this man, but you realize, or there's something about him that links him to the morning night. And you realize that you have just hurt an ally or a friend or someone dear to the one that you love.
Let's talk dice. Do you have a skill that would help you out with a low blow here?
I mean, I feel like surprise, traps, and
surprise,
death
yeah.
are all sort of like
Yeah.
hovering around that. Yeah.
You got your light die. Devil's Bargain. I actually really like Jazzy's idea as a devil's bargain.
Mhm.
That there is a sign of the morning night on this person in some way.
Are there any others,
And-
or
Yeah, everybody can offer one. That's mine though.
I don't know. It's pretty good. Yeah, I don't think I have a better one right now.
I just have the basic, no matter what the stinger grazes you, and weird effects follow.
Not a bad one though. I kind of stole your idea, Jazzy, but if you have another devil's bargain, by all means.
No, I think that was the one that I had.
Yeah.
no? I like it.
Actually-
I will take it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say I did actually have one. I think that sort of playing off what Kavya said, I think you'll manage to kill him, but some of the bee venom will leach into you, and you'll start to see the morning night in places.
I
Also
think I
very
would-
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Like now I'm torn. I kind of like the surreality of like seeing the morning night in
I
places.
kind of like that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to go with
actually-
that one.
I like
Yeah.
that one. You got 2 light dice, and I think dark dice automatic because of the violence. So go ahead and roll 2 light, 1 dark.
All right. That was an unfortunate roll. That is a 3 dark high.
Oh, I don't see it. Hold on, let me refresh. For some reason it's not showing up for me. So it was a 3 dark high.
Mhm.
Oh, so you have to stop. But I don't think your ruin goes up, so at least that's that. You do fail though. So let's talk about failure. Unless someone helps you, you fail. But everyone else is kind of distracted right now. I don't think anyone's really like, I've already identified how you are not in a visible place. Yeah, this goes really poorly. You make your move with a stinger, and he catches it and he's like, treachery is this? And there's a moment where you're both like struggling or whatever, right, to do the thing, and he starts like doing wild buzzing in your face. So he's got like this mask, and he just starts going bzz, 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 bzz. And that's enough to distract you to where he wrenches the stinger out of your hand and plunges it into your stomach, grabs the pack with all the stuff in it, and runs off. But you cry out, getting everyone's attention as you are writhing in pain down in down in the ditch. Ifori, Bill, Alina, you all hear the commotion down in the ditch. You might even catch the fourth apiarist running away from the ditch, deeper into the woods in the direction where you're all eventually headed. Alina, what do you do?
I think almost as if by instinct, hearing again this cry for help, you all get the feeling that this is like a Pavlov reaction for Alina or something. Immediately just beelining in that direction. And I think she's like going to drop on her knees next to Velen and just start rummaging through her pack and through what she can find here to help. So,
Velen,
it doesn't get worse.
the venom is working in really strange ways. You don't see Alina come over the crest of the ditch. You see the morning night come over the crest of the ditch. Your hero, your savior. Alina, you see the wound in Velen's side, and you can taste the sweetness in your salivary glands. Quite active. It's almost like there's a connection between the two things. Alina, what do you do?
Yeah, I'll start like spitting in my hands and like pressing it down. And then I think there will be a moment where I'm like, this is not enough. And I'll just like kneel down and just straight up like put my mouth to the wound and let the saliva like directly go into the wound to try and help.
Ifori, the other three apiarists at this point are standing at the edge of the ditch, looking down in awe as Alina laps at Valen's wound. And they're muttering to themselves, yes, this is the prophecy come true, brothers. This, we can afford the treachery of our colleague, for it has revealed this truth to us. And Ifori, what are you doing right now as you realize that this scene is just further feeding into whatever they think they've got going on here?
Internally, Ifori finds this very opportune. They're all going for the same goal. So these weird fanboys who apparently probably want to use Alina as an offering are very much useful to her. So I think she's watching this and maybe egging it on with just vaguely ambient lines that could be interpreted. I'm trying to think of one, but it's not happening. But yeah, she's encouraging this subtly.
Indeed. Nil, what are you doing right now?
I think Nil is still over by the bee and the horse, and it's got kind of has the bee on his arm now and sort of petting it like a cat. And I think as the commotion's going on, he stares down the hill and sees everyone sort of gathered. He sees the apiarists who are distracted by Alina's healing techniques. But I think that he still sees them as competition, especially the apiarists. They've met the bees. They know more about them than the others do. And I think he knows that they're not going anywhere anytime soon, but he can make their life a little bit more difficult. And so I think that he looks at the horse and he looks at the herbs that Alina had picked from the ground, and he begins to pull some of them up, but far too many. He begins to mash them up and he offers them to the horse.
Indeed. Valen, the morning night is leaning over you. He's in a sort of, he has almost like a sort of internal glow, like the morning sun. The source of the forest's warmth is coming from his body. You can feel it radiating off of his splendid armor. Although we didn't really establish whether the morning night, we didn't really gender the morning night. Did you imagine it was a man or a woman?
I imagine a man.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm keeping it with everyone's idea here. And he says, "Don't worry, my love. I will help you." And he removes his helmet and bends down and begins licking your wound. And Alina, you have to make a risk roll to save Valen at this point. The venom is going to do terrible, terrible damage to Valen, possibly even kill Valen. I think that's basically what's at stake. I will give you a light die for remedies. And
Very
so-
generous.
Yeah, indeed. And but devil's bargains, everybody else can make an offer.
No matter what, Alina, you having licked up this wound, the only thing sweeter and more delicious than your own saliva is now blood.
I have an idea. But my idea is this, like, no matter what, Valen continues to believe Alina is the morning night. And the only thing is that has like implications of like romantic, like one-way romantic interest from one character to another. If you're all okay with that, we can do that, but it's okay if either of you prefer not to. But I will throw it out there though.
I would be fine with that.
I would be fine with that too.
Devil's bargain. Your no matter what, your saliva is now I don't know if it would be tangy or spicy, but that and sweet, dual natured.
Oh, these are all very interesting.
Daniel, you can offer one too, even though
I
you're
feel like I'm a little close to this one, so I'm just gonna let
you
it
can
ride.
you can let it ride. Yeah, it's fine. What do you think, Jesse?
I think I like this emerging team of people seeing Alina as something else or something that she herself does not see.
Right.
So I think I will go with the one that Valen will keep seeing me as the morning night. I think that's a cool team that we've got going.
You have 2 light dice, and I don't think there's a dark die yet because you are not in danger. So go ahead and roll 2 light.
A 6.
Very good. Valen, or Daniel, really, I would like for you to describe the healing and how you come out of it.
I think what Valen sees is the morning night coming and like removing his helm and resting his beautiful head in Valen's lap while Valen like strokes his hair, and they profess their love to each other, right? And clearly it is the strength of that love that brings Valen back from the pit of death. So there's a lot of light, a lot of warmth, and then suddenly Valen is better.
Very good. Ifori, for whatever reason, the Apiarists think they can trust you in this. And one of them says, "Of course, there is a great sickness currently ravaging the sixth form heart. We have been looking for the cure for some time. One interpretation of the prophecy is that the healer herself is the balm that will heal the hive, that her precious fluids must be spilled so that the hive can live. I feel very confident now that this colleague of yours is willing to make the sacrifice for which they are destined. But should they be somewhat recalcitrant, can we count on you to help us fulfill doing what is necessary?
I believe that won't be necessary in the least. Alina has shown that she cannot resist the urge to help those in need, and the sixth form heart is, surely in need.
Very interesting indeed. Nil. As we are wrapping up here in this ring, the bee whispers something to you, something that no one knows about the sixth form heart, something that is not yet revealed to the world, certainly not to these fools, these apiarists who believe themselves to be human followers of the Mother of Millions. They have no concept of this. The Mother of Millions cares nothing for them. Think on what that secret might be. And here with Valen, reunited with his love, coming out of his envenomment, and Ifori engaging in clandestine conversations with the apiarists, and Alina perhaps wondering why everyone's looking at her. We wrap up ring 1. Let's take a 5-minute break. Ring 2. Valen, I'd like for you to go ahead and make a ruin roll because of being reunited with the Morning Knight. Even though it's a good thing, it is certainly an unusual thing.
That is a 3. I am good, I believe.
Indeed you are. Good. You are going deeper into the woods. The forest actually opens up into a floodplain where recent rains have formed a shallow inland sea. The entire floodplain is a riot of color due to flowering plants that take advantage of the precipitation, their stalks poking skyward well above the waterline. In fact, the average plant comes to just past head height, their roots forming a rough and uneven carpet that is visible under the water. This makes your footing treacherous, and the progress through this part is slow. This riot of plant life, of color, of now very humid heat, the swaying of fronds and petals. It's very easy to lose sight of one another. All it takes is for one of you to briefly get distracted by something, and then the group has moved on, or one person to stop and tighten the laces on their boots and the group has moved on. Ifori, the three Apiarists are sticking close to you, but always keeping an eye out for Alina, who they believe is critical to whatever prophecy they are trying to fulfill. Balin, I assume you're staying pretty close to the morning night.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Nil, you have your own company. Let's start with Nil. Nil, at a certain point, you find yourself separate from the group. You can kind of hear them sloshing about, but it's just you and your bee friend. And you come upon a swollen body, half rotted in the shallow pool. And its hands are clutching a brazier. And the hands are burnt. Make a ruin roll first.
That's a 6.
You are going up. What do you do? How does it make you feel?
I think seeing the brazier, it seems to be a finely made brazier, something you'd see in Amberette. And there's this flashback that he has to a time where he did not meet the expectations of a day's work with the High Gardeners, and as punishment, they preferred fire, branding. And so I think there's a moment where he looks down at his own hands and sees that the top of his hands have been kind of slashed with burn marks. And it kind of jolts him into this memory, and he looks to the bee for comfort, and it brings it back down to where they're at to this moment. And I think he tries to like gently pet the bee as sort of like an emotional support bee, and then realizing that this person and this brazier could afford them something, perhaps, and maybe in trade or in something monetary. I think that he'll whisper to the bee, do you know who that is? Do you know what that is?
The bee now makes sounds that sound much more like language as you understand it. Perhaps this is the deepening of your condition. You are currently at Ruin 5, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the bee says, yes, I know this one. This is the punishment that comes to all who would make themselves master of the sixth form heart.
He looks back down at the bloated body, and there's a look of concern on his face. And he looks back at the bee and says, "No, I don't want to be anyone's master. I just want to see the queen. That's all."
The bee crawls over to where your heart is or should be, and its stinger is protruding and glistening. And it says, if your own heart is judged to be treacherous, we shall pierce it and see what dribbles out.
think he contemplates that for a moment, and he keeps looking back at the body that's floating, bloated. And after a few moments, he snaps out of it and goes, "No treachery is in my heart. I can assure you, I've served your kind for many, many years, and I have no interest in betraying that trust."
And yet you will betray the trust of those you traveled here with.
They are inconsequential to me.
Indeed, you are at Ruin 5. You're entitled to do the reduction roll.
I would love to do a reduction roll.
You just have to betray the group.
Yeah. I guess I can't retroactively betray him by poisoning the horse. So
Well,
figure this out.
I'm kind of into it, actually. I don't think it's too bad because the horse might have made the journey partway
Yeah.
before collapsing, right? And then
Yeah.
that might be when the group is aware of it, right?
Yeah, I definitely think it was sort of his attempt to undermine Alina as this kind of
Yeah.
prophet of this sign of
Yeah.
holiness to these beekeepers, and so I think that even especially midway through that the horse just sort of suddenly collapses.
I
It's
like
sort of yeah.
Make the reduction roll. Your ruin goes down no matter what, but this is a roll to see if anyone picks up on what happened. So you got a 5. That is less than that is the same as your
Yeah.
current ruin. Your ruin goes down to 4, but someone at least will be aware that you poisoned the horse.
Yeah, I mean, I was the only one back there when everyone was
Right,
down there.
yeah.
So who else?
Exactly
Yeah.
right. Alina, I think we'll have the group be together for a bit because I think this is the way this goes. The horse begins to foam wildly at the mouth and lets out these terrible guttural gasping neighs. And it just kind of, its muscles clench and tighten and stiffen, and then it just slams down, splashes hard in the shallow water. The apiarists look up with their mesh masks. They look at Alina. Before you can hear them mutter, "Were the prophecies wrong? Did we miscalculate? Are we doomed to watch the sacred hive wither? Watch without the ability to help? Helpless fools, unable to help their queen." Alina, Oifori, what do you do?
I think I just say to them, your faith is weak. She has not made her move yet.
Alina, you will notice what happened to the horse, and you'll pick up immediately on what happened because you know what you did, and you understand these herbs and what can happen if applied improperly. Alina, you might even be the first to realize that Nil was the one who did it. What do you do?
I think I just sit down and I there's a moment where I look at Nell and then I look at the rest and I say, it's this heat. There's not enough to drink for the horse. It was going to happen either way. I'm terribly sorry.
Valen, what are you doing right now?
I think Valen is trying to figure out, is trying to sort of square what is going on between what the apiarists are saying and what he is seeing. And I think that as the apiarists are talking about Alina / the Morning Night, Valen looks over to her, and in his mind's eye, he sees that rot has again begun creeping up onto his beloved's face. And at this point, he just turns away and shudders and starts muttering no to himself over and over again.
Ifori, one of the apiarists, because they speak quietly to where only you can hear them, says, "The heat, that makes no sense. I famously have the most delicate constitution of all of us here, and yet I have managed to survive the heat well enough."
Question for Alina. Would Ifori have caught the glance that you gave Nil before speaking?
Sure. Yeah, I think you could have seen like that. I'm imagining like that slight movie pause that every character makes before they lie. So the audience knows it's a lie. Like that moment, I think.
Perfect. Perhaps there are other things at work here. Then there's a pause where she makes herself like spit out the word brothers.
The apiarists.
Oh, good.
Go ahead, Valen. Yeah,
Oh,
please.
yeah. So I think Valen is going to have sort of like this epiphany and is going to try to take Alina's hand and guide it to the horse. And assuming that can happen, Valen is going to animate the horse's body.
Oh, very good. Because you have that ritual, right?
I do.
It'll be fun.
Amazing.
That is certainly a risk roll, obviously, for use of the ritual. Group, what could go wrong here? It feels like there's some fun opportunities here.
I think what could go wrong is that the apiarists view resurrection as heretical, and they will immediately turn on all of us.
I have an idea, but I think it'll work better as a devil's bargain. So
I think what could go wrong is that this ritual, because you want to help your knight so much, you're kind of going to try to, like the horse and the rot that you just saw on Alina, you're going to try and fix both on the morning night, and you're going to give like far too much of yourself. And I think parts of your body could start to rot or have some adverse effect when you do this ritual.
I don't have any better idea than what's been offered, so let's go ahead and go to dice. So, Valen. Surprise, traps, vermin, and death.
Death.
Yeah, so you've got your light die. Devil's bargains. My bargain is this.
Oh, can I just clarify real quick that part of my goal here is to not only resurrect the horse, but also to make it seem as though
Alina did it, right? Yeah. My devil's bargain is no matter what, the horse is a horror. Like it comes back alive, but it's a fucking monster. Like it's really bad.
I think no matter what, you're kind of moving your magic through her, and in doing so, you have turned your lover against you, aka somehow, some way, Alina starts seeing you as one of Hafir, was it Hafir's? Yeah,
Lord Hafir,
Hafir's underlings, followers.
And I think no matter what, the ritual goes off, and they believe that Alina did it. But the morning night will continue to rot throughout the entire duration of the trip, and you'll be helpless to stop it.
I was kind of going to go in the opposite way of Ifori and say that no matter what, when Alina sees how you're trying to help her, she is going to get unhealthily attached to you.
This I'm spoiled for choice. I love the idea of the horse being a horror, but I think that that is antithetical to what I'm trying to do. So I think I would like to take Jax.
Which remind me of what it was, Jack.
He'll continue to see the morning night, but he'll continue to watch him rot and
Oh, the
they
rock.
help us.
Yeah. Okay, good. I love it. You've got 2 light dice. You have to do the dark die because of the ritual. So go ahead and roll risk 2 light, 1 dark. That is a 5 dark, which means it's high, which also means your ruin goes up. It's successful. There is a complication. The complication is that the horse is off a little bit. It's not quite right. It's alive though. I'll handle that part of it if you want to go ahead and just describe how generally you manage to make the morning night or Alina's reputation restored. What does it look like?
Yeah. So I think I think Balin will be sort of like half dragging Alina to the to the fallen horse, and we'll just get very close and draw her hand to the horse, and we'll say, "No one will doubt my love, and your steed will rise," and we'll we'll sort of like just breathe life right into the horse, which then raises his head and starts to stand.
Indeed, the apiarists are like, oh, brothers, how could we have doubted? How could we have doubted? It truly, we truly are the great interpreters of prophecy that we previously believed ourselves to be. We are here on this sacred mission. And the balm is filled with vitality. The horse ambles up on its legs. It gives a single shake, and then it's very, very still. Its eyes just sort of drift to one point. A flower, say. And when the apiarists try to get its attention or bring it to, follow, there's a distinct noticeable pause. They're like, "Come on, girl." And the horse is just like kind of, it takes a moment for the horse to register what they want it to do. And it doesn't make whinnying and neighing noises anymore. Now it just sort of goes, and it clumps along in the water. And Nil, how are you feeling right now?
Salty. His plan to undermine this god Alina is totally failed on him, it seems. But it's fine, the day is still early relatively, and they've got a long way to go still. So he's definitely in the back though, sort of stroking the bee and scowling.
You're entitled to keep making reduction rolls for what it's worth.
Oh, yeah, I will.
And Nil, Valen, your ruin went up, so I owe you a condition. You've already kind of got a condition, truth be told, with this morning night thing. Except I think that basically I think that this place becomes fundamentally connected to your idea of the morning night. You feel compelled to drape, cloak, dress the morning night in the flowers of this place, in the, you know, the environment of it, you must make the two things one. And so I'm curious how that starts to show itself. How do you begin to crown the morning night with the bounty of the humming woods?
I imagine that what we're wading through has a lot of like life in it, right? Like swamp plants and like carnivorous plants and things like that, right? So I think that as they're trudging along, Valen is just busily plucking small, colorful things from the earth and is weaving them into a crown. And then at some point along the way, he will just turn. He'll just turn to Alina, and his face is sort of a combination of just intense adoration and disgusted horror, right? And he will just gently place the crown, the crown on his head, the morning knight's head, and say, "Yeah, no matter what, you will always be beautiful to me."
Alina, I guess at this point you're probably figuring out there's something going on with Valen. What are you
Yeah.
thinking right now?
I think she has realized it, but it seems like whatever is going on is making him, want to help her and want to be on her side. So she's, and it doesn't seem to be directly harming him. So she's like, okay, I can work with this. This works for me. So I think as she accepts the crown, she will bend her head a little, so he can put it on, and then I will whisper to Valen, "Watch Nil. He is not on our side anymore." And then I lean back and just smile and pretend everything's fine.
Some time passes. The sun is getting a little lower in the sky, but it's still quite warm, quite wet. Euphoria, you've managed to break off from the group completely, even the three apiarists. You hear something, Euphoria, off in a stand of trees. The sound of someone's voice, a man's voice. Please, I just want to come back. I just want to be allowed back in. I've seen so many things. I know I have something to offer. I know that if you'll just give me an audience with her, I'll prove my worth. I only want to show that I am a good worker bee. If you hear this, what do you do?
I think as she's stepping towards the forest, because as a player, I need to explore this. She says, a good worker bee wouldn't be moaning in the forest like this. They'd be proving themselves.
You come around the bend and you see in the stand of trees the fourth beekeeper, the one that ran away, the one that stabbed Valen. Though, to be fair, Valen had it coming. He's on his knees. He no longer has his beekeeper hood on. He's just a young guy. But importantly, there are a number of large, dog-sized bees clinging to the trees around him, almost like they are sitting in judgment. I would like for you to make a ruin roll before I. You got a 2. How are you keeping it together right now?
I think she's keeping it together by keeping her goal in mind. And now that she's seen that there are bees here, she has to recalculate how she goes about this.
What do you do then? I mean, you say what you say, and then he turns to see you. And he says, I am willing to give everything if it is asked of me. And he looks at the bees. Is that what you ask of me? Do you need my fluids for the hive? Take them. They're yours. Drink of the nectar beneath my flesh. Ifori, what
If
do you
it
do?
is what they ask of you, you show no initiative past paltry betrayals and misguided attempts to win favor. If you had stuck around longer, you would see that we come bearing the bomb.
He says,
Your nectars are not needed here.
I was just scared. I was attacked. I was attacked by your colleague. I ran. I didn't know what else to do.
I'm sure you were.
I feel like this is perhaps the end of my story. I only want to be useful. I only want to give them everything inside of me. But I am weak.
If you truly want to help, perhaps you should end your story faster. The day grows long.
And he passes the stinger over to you, or he holds it out to you. Do you take it?
No, I just cross my arms and I stand in judgment because I said you should end it faster.
And he looks at the stinger in his hands. He looks up at the bees. They've kind of crawled off in disinterest. And he says, I cannot do it. I am weak. I am a coward. I have a famously low tolerance for blood and fear and discomfort.
Sorry, it's the fact that they each have a famously bad something. I think she same judging look. More's the pity. Then she turns and leaves.
Good. Meanwhile, Nil, you come upon a swarm of fuzzy bees, also the size of your fists, but these are very furry. They're crawling all over like a large, it almost looks like a large armadillo. They are trying to stab their stingers into this large armadillo-like creature, but it's useless because they can't penetrate its armor. The armadillo eventually coils up into a ball, and more of these furry bees, great big swarms of them, begin landing all over the armadillo. And they begin wildly vibrating, buzzing. Your bee companion says, "And now comes the fire." And you can start to smell as the bees land and create this buzzing, undulating mass. They are actually heating the creature up. You can smell its flesh. The creature's cooking in its own pot. What do you do?
I think he's entranced by the buzzing. It's hypnotic to him. And having grown up in a place like the Charcoal District, he's not unfamiliar with the scent of burning flesh and horribly questionable cooked meats. So I think he just sort of in that hypnotic daze starts to glide towards the cooking creature covered with the bees. But he will ask his little bee friend, are they a part of your kingdom?
We are all a part of her queendom.
Yes, I'm sorry, of course. Would you like me to help you inside?
And then at this point, after a time, you hear the creature, the armadillo creature, let out one last gasp. It stops struggling. The bees take wing, leaving behind the cooked carcass, the smell of charred meat in your nose.
Why did they do that? Did they not eat it?
It is a gift. The gift of meat.
Oh,
It is a gift for you.
so many blessings. Thank you so much. And I think he just immediately rushes over as soon as the bees take flight, starts to just kind of like dig into the shell.
Make a
Fishing
rune
them.
roll.
Yep.
You got a one,
It's
so
a
you're okay.
one.
You're feeling full, satisfied, and the entire time, the bee is just muttering, "Eat, eat, eat your fill, eat, eat. The meat is your nectar. Eat."
Should I save some for later? Should I not fill myself up for the rest of the journey? Should I save space?
There is no saving space. The hunger is endless. It knows no fathom.
Of course. And he'll get down on hands and knees and just bury his face into it, just eating it like a pig at a trough.
Meanwhile, I'd like to just have a scene between Valen and Alina, whatever this awkward situation is with the two of them, tromping through the water.
Yeah, I think as we go, Alina will look to Valen and say, I believe this journey will only get more dangerous. You'll protect me, won't you?
I think when Alina looks over to Valen, Valen is currently busily putting together some other piece of, you know, vegetative jewelry, and kind of stops and sort of cocks his head and looks at Alina and says, "But aren't you supposed to protect me?"
I will. But we must be there for each other when it's necessary.
Oh, well then of course. I will be here for you.
You seek something in this forest. I seek something too. When I ask for it, will you give me your aid?
Of course. Without hesitation. And when the time comes for me to repair you, I will do whatever it takes.
Valen, I'm
Repair
cu-
me.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask Valen, what signs of the rot are you seeing on the morning night right now?
Oh, I think one of his eyes is drooping from its socket and hanging limply at his cheek, bouncing as he talks to me. And when you ask the question, he will just sort of like motion to you in general, like, you know.
Of course. You will repair me with the cure that the Mother of Million gives.
Yes.
You will give that to me.
Yes.
Of course. The cure is important. I will accept it from you.
And then he'll sort of like toss a treacherous glance at wherever Nil is.
I think Nil might just be coming out into the clearing with hot armadillo fat smeared on his mouth, reeking of meat. Ifori will probably also come round, as well as the three apiarists. And the sun is low enough in the sky to where it's time to make camp. The apiarists make themselves very helpful. They build a fire. They know something about fires and smoke, as it turns out. And everyone is getting kind of comfortable, maybe settling in, possibly. I think I'd just like to have the scene with all of you around the fire at camp, enjoying the reprieve from the heat.
I think everyone would notice Nil's posture is more relaxed now, mostly because he's eaten. And I think he's also hidden the bee, let it sort of like latched onto him underneath his shirt so that they can't see it. But he's just sort of reclined, staring at the fire. And I think by this point he's wiped most of the, viscera off his face, but he's definitely kind of been drenched from head to shoulders since he buried his face in there. So it's kind of like the firelight glistening off of some of that moisture, the residual fat and blood that's in his hair and on his suit.
I think Valen is busy making a mossy bed and covering it with strange flora.
I think Ifori's helping the apiarist set up, but really she's just doing minimal work, so it looks like she's part of them.
Lena, I'm sure glad that horse pulled through.
The horse. The horse is standing over with its face pressed up against a tree. It's been that way for about half an hour, unmoving.
Yeah, me as well. You were so close to it after I cured it. I was afraid it was going to hurt you. I'm glad it didn't.
And quite a cure it was until look over at the horse, just kind of buried with its face against the bark of the tree. Do horses usually make that sound? They don't usually make that sound where I come from.
Oh. Well, it's here and it's walking.
Then it must be alive then.
It must be.
Valen, what are you doing over there?
I'm making a bed, of course. It's not for you.
It's just curious because you haven't made any beds of this sort in the days leading up to this. I'm just wondering why now, why this place?
You seem very interested in my behavior. Have you been watching me?
I'm merely curious. You are my traveling companions, and I find that this is the first time in days that we've been able to just settle and sit and think and talk.
Well,
It's
it
very
seems that
kind.
Go ahead.
I'll say that's very kind of you, Nil. You look drenched. Are you quite all right?
I'm the best I've been in quite some time.
Where'd your friend get off to?
I'm sorry.
Your friend.
I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about.
The bee? Or was I mistaken and you don't make friends with bees?
My relationship with bees is a little bit more complex than just friendship. But no, the bee went on its way. I'm not one to keep them. And he looks at the apiarist, kind of like with this derisive look.
Do tell me more. After all, we are traveling companions.
Well, have you ever been to Amberhead?
I passed through.
Well, I'm sure that even if you haven't been there, you've heard of the rose gardens and the way that they bloom and their splendor, their majesty. It's unrivaled anywhere in all the world, even in Nagana. But those particular roses are only pollinated by a certain kind of bee, and that bee tends to prefer a hive and home, a nest in the bodies of the living. And so I, as a custodian, was a home to those bees. In the high gardens, we would house them through the day, helping them to pollinate, helping them to grow things. And I think that's when he kind of stops and realizes that he's been talking too much about himself and sort of clams up a bit and shrugs down.
How lovely to be both the apiary and the apiarist.
I'm sure the mother will look upon you kindly if you do such things for her children.
That is the hope.
At this point, once there's a bit of a lull in the conversation as the night grows long, an enormous moose, 8 feet tall at the shoulder, just walks into your clearing, entirely unafraid. Its broad antlers are coated in honey and speckled with bees, some of them living, some of them dead. And the beast's snout is sticky and slick, and its hoof prints leave like a golden rind in the ground as they catch the light from your fire. The moose gives you a cursory glance and then proceeds on its way. I think that this moose is a creature of folk legend. Maybe you've each heard a story about the moose with the antlers covered in honey and bees. Maybe there's something about the presence of the moose that gives you heart, or lets you know that you're on the right path. Or maybe the moose is a sign of ill portent. But in any case, I'd like to know what you've each heard about this moose.
I think it's part of a legend that before he's heard, where this moose was once the queen's most trusted advisor before he was thrown out, and every version of the story disagrees on why, but now they just roam the forest, and despite disowning them and throwing them out, the queen never, I can't think of the word, but villainized them is the best I can come up with right now. And so the bees still look upon it kindly.
I think Nils heard a different story in his time. It's mostly from older hunters who've been to the woods. But the moose was actually a woman, but not just any woman. She was a saint, a mother. And she had become so taken by the honey of this hive, of these special bees, these sacred bees, that she renounced her essentially her godhood to remain in the forest and continue to live off the honey and experience the bliss that came with it.
I heard that this was once a peasant who stood up against a great tyrant at the edges of this forest, showing remarkable bravery even in a fight that they could clearly never win. And when eventually the village fell to this tyrant and the battle turned against him, they made sure that as many people as possible got out. And with their dying breath, they stumbled into this forest. And there was something in this forest that perhaps took pity or found something beautiful in such a gracious heart. And rather than letting this person die, he transformed into this beautiful moose and became a guardian of this forest.
I think in the places where Valen grew up, it was the moose that represented the beast that carried the dead to their final rest. So seeing this moose here drenched in honey is a sign, a good sign, a portent of success in Valen's quest, and he's heartened by it.
You are all sharing stories of this moose around the fire. Eventually, you turn in for the night. Looking up at the stars. Perhaps you notice one particular constellation that is bright in the sky. A constellation that itself is a representation of one of the sisters. And whether you follow the faith or not, perhaps the stars of the sisters looking down upon you give you hope, perhaps not. But in any case, you quickly realize that these are not stars in the sky at all. They are insects, bees glowing. They disperse into a swarm and fly away, leaving the night sky perfectly dark and black. The only light is the dying embers of your campfire. And in the distance, you hear the buzzing coming deep from within deep in the forest. So passes ring 2. That also concludes our session for today. Let's do a quick debrief. We will do stars and wishes for our debrief. That's kind of ironic considering what just happened. Stars are things that you enjoyed about the session, either something from the incursion, something one of your fellow players did, something I did, some bits of role play, whatever have you, whatever appeals. And then wishes are things that you hope to see in the story next time we get together. So whoever wants to go first, take it away.
Go first. Let's see. Kavya, I love how cold and vicious Euphoria is. Yeah, I just goading the APRS along and just masterminding their situation is just fantastic to watch, and I love it so much. Jazzy, Alina, I love the fact that you doubled down on the weird throughout this whole thing, and that you've been so open to everything that has come your way. That's just been fantastic. Very exciting. And Jack, I love your flashbacks with Nil. Like, you have such a good concept of what the character, not only who he is, but also what he's been through. And I just love seeing that. And I'm really excited to see more. Jason, I have lots of stars for you, but I think the one that is really standing out for me right now is how you just went with it. Some very strange things happened as a result of the dice and everything, and I think that could have thrown off a lot of people, but I think that you did just a great job of just diving right into it. So.
Yeah, stars for me all around. I really liked everyone's treasure hunter. I said it before in chat, but I think everyone's like got a very realized idea who their treasure hunter is. Star for Loom, because that's how I got a lot of what I was doing with Nil. There's a lot of interesting little bits I was able to pull from that, so that was very helpful. I really liked Jazzy, because I've never played with Jazzy, and I've only played with Daniel for 2 seconds. But you were both really, really fun to play with, and obviously Kavya is always going to be a little gremlin. But I really liked Alina's reaction to the betrayal that Nila did, because it felt very real. It would be easier to just go like to this like immediate betrayal place and like accusatory kind of thing. But I think that Alina's playing the long game, and I think that really came through, and I really like that. I'm obsessed with this gay love story between Valen and the Morning Knight. Totally shipping that. But I love, and I'm part of a wish too, is like to see how that plays out and how that kind of comes to a head by the end of this with Alina, and kind of the realization of what she is actually, and that, that's going to be fun. And then Afori is just a sassy queen. I love her. She's my kind of girl, but yeah, that scene with the kind of like pitiful apiarist, and her just kind of telling him to, if you're gonna if you're just going to sit here and whine, you can offer yourself. It's fine. I don't care either way. So I love her coldness. And then to you, Jason, always so good with the descriptions and making something feel very atmospheric and yeah, and also really good at like bouncing back and forth between everybody. I feel like everyone got like really good equal bunches of time to showcase things. And yeah, my wish is to hang out with some more bees. Yeah.
For my stars, for Nil, or Jack, I really loved the conversation around the fire, with Nil just kind of leaning into like, I don't trust any of you, and you started that with the water, when Alina offered the herbs, and then I think there was like a progression where it was just like, I need a second to think if I want to accept something from you, and then now it's just like borderline hostile, which I think is very interesting, and I'm very interested to see how that goes further. Valen, for Daniel, I really loved that Valen is like obviously like wanting to protect the Morning Knight, but I really loved that line of, wait, aren't you supposed to protect me? Because I thought just in that one line, you made that dynamic between them really interesting and really fleshed out in just one line. And then also, that was just a really interesting reaction with Alina kind of trying to manipulate and then bringing the story in a direction of, you can do it, but not entirely. So just with that one line, just really, really great reaction. And then for Kavya, I think, yeah, as we said, I just love Ifori. And I think I especially loved, again, just like one line, but when they were like, when it happens, when the sacrifice needs to happen, and Ifori doing that non-committal, like, oh, I'm sure that won't be necessary, while we all, know that she doesn't trust Alina to necessarily do the right thing, but it's about covering herself, which I thought was really, really great, and felt very natural for you to like portray it in that way. And for Jason, I really loved what you did with the fanboy thing, to have it be like, oh, there's a prophecy and we're going to sacrifice her, and just that whole, as I said, I really love this emerging team that everybody here has an opinion on Alina that is not really about Alina, but it's like these external factors that have happened, and now everybody's kind of propping her up as a prophet, as a knight, as a rival, even though she's just kind of like not necessarily unaware, but doing a completely different thing, which is really, really cool. Which was also immediately my wish. I really want to see how all of these different viewpoints of Alina, how they merge, how they change, how they will decide her fate. I really, as I said, I don't think, like, one of her teams is that she doesn't like being helpless. So I think that's really cool to then see that everybody's sort of forcing her into a role that she didn't decide. So that agency concept, that's really cool. I definitely want to explore that more. And I think more chances for Alina to show that she is very kind and she is very sweet, but she's also definitely something else as well. I think we had a few peaks in that, some glimpses of that coming through towards the end, but I'm very excited to reveal more of that second side.
Stars for me, overall star for how weird it got so quickly, which I think was a function of my second star, which is I loved everyone's character work. Like Nil, I love that from the get-go you have created the character as like sort of a foil to everything else, which consequently allowed me to let Ifori kind of blend into the background for later usage. Alina, Jazzy, I love how you just, yeah, took the entire entourage adoration thing and just ran with it. And I love that we did get to see how she's sort of using it for her own benefit. And Daniel, excellent concept with the gay love story from the get-go. And then that it would have been really easy for you to be like, oh yeah, I'll protect you when Alina asked Valen. But I like that we now have that juxtaposition between what Alina would do and what the knight would do. And now Jazzy has to work to balance that, which is great. Jason, 1 star for the I have a famously weak something gag that's going, and another star for somehow making Ifori now manager of these fanboys. That's what it feels like, and I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah, for me, stars, I really I think everyone did a really good job with characterization. I understood these characters really quickly. And that's kind of what you want in Trophy Dark. Like, I think it's good to kind of like just dive right in and start playing your character to their type or whatever. And so I thought everyone did a really good job with that. I really liked how the dice affected the story. So the failure in the ditch with the one beekeeper was really like critical to like where the story went, right? Like the fact that Valen got stabbed, and then that kind of like segued nicely into this strange salivary condition that Alina got, which also segued nicely into this like the romance thing between the Morning Knight and Valen. Like all that stuff just kind of really came together, and I really feel like the dice like pushed a lot of that, and I was really or at least our reactions to the dice pushed a lot of that, and so that was very fun to see. Individual stars, I really I like the way that Jack, I like the way that you're playing this like connection to the bees. I think it's really interesting, and it's almost ironic, like it has this like kind of irony to it, which I think is really fun. And it's kind of fun to and I like that you've kind of set yourself apart from the group in that way. I think that's really enjoyable to watch. I really enjoyed the scene with Ifori and that famously weak-willed beekeeper at the end. I thought that was just a really good scene. It told us a lot about Ifori. Like it was a very like, this is what Ifori's deal is. And because I think there's a way that scene could have gone where Ifori could have just like done the deed and killed the guy, right? And the bees, take him away or whatever, right? Or they eat him or whatever. But no, it was like this more like it was something more, it was more profound than that. It was like just Ifori saying, whatever, dude, like do whatever you're gonna do, and then just walking off. And that leaves that guy still on the table too, which is kind of fun. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. I really enjoyed Valen's Daniel, I like the way you've kind of committed to this like idea of the Morning Knight and how you've worked that into like your character's actions and into the story. That was really fun. I also really liked the line of, I thought you were supposed to protect me. Like I thought that was a great line. It was delivered at the right moment. It was really good. Yeah, and Jazzy, I like that you are taking on these like strange sort of like interpretations of what your character is and sort of leaning into that. And it's good. I really, really enjoyed how you handled the betrayal of Nil. Someone already pointed it out, but it was a really good moment when you were just like basically like, I've got eyes on you, Nil, but for now I'm going to play along, right? I thought that was really good. It felt, in the movie version of our game, it felt like a really good scene. Yeah, so I'm having a really good time with it. And my only, I guess my main wish, I think, is more of a mechanical one. I hope that we get to have a contest roll by the end of it. I think it'd be really fun to have a contest roll between one or more treasure hunters, presumably going after the Mother of Millions or the jelly, but maybe something else. I don't know. I think that'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So, any other stars or wishes?
Star for the horse, because I know you like a creepy horse.
Yeah.
Creepy horses are a thing that I like to do. So yeah.
It is amazing. Also a star for the gay love story. Like I didn't say it because I didn't want to repeat it, but I feel like I have to say it. It's great. I love it.
I think that's really interesting about it is I just like how like it is like I just I love there's so much dramatic irony with Valen and this morning night story because
Mhm.
it's like pure delusion and it's like pure delusion and it is like one gets the impression that like the morning night, the actual morning night, like is not really even like getting a say in any of this. Like they're just a shambling zombie, presumably somewhere, you know. And Valen has like put all this on the situation. I really like it. It's fun um like I feel like there's gonna be a tragic end for Valen in the morning night. I don't know how, but that's my sense. So yeah. Anyway. Is that it? We all good?
Mhm.
All right. Well, I'm gonna
Okay.
wave goodbye. Let's all wave goodbye to people watching the video.